All right, guys, today I'm gonna bake some pizzas from dough made with a pre-ferment. First, I'm gonna walk you through the steps on how I make this particular type of dough. We'll fire up my Ooni Koda 16, I'll bake off those pizzas, and we'll taste the results. So there are two basic methods when mixing dough. First, the straight dough approach, which is the simplest of the two. Essentially, you dissolve your yeast in water, mix everything together in one shot, and let the final dough bulk ferment for a period of time. The second method is using that pre-ferment. Now, this is where you mix a portion of the flour, water, and yeast in a recipe ahead of time, and this is going to allow the yeast to fully activate and ferment before you add the remainder of your ingredients. Some bakers believe that this method gives you better texture, more rise in your dough, and an improved flavor. But I definitely encourage you to try both approaches and make your own decision on what you prefer. Now, there are 4 types of pre-ferments made with commercial yeast, but today we're going to focus on a Biga, which is the Italian version of a pre-ferment, and it's going to make up half of the total weight of our final dough. All right, enough of my gabbing, let's get down to business. All right, to make this Biga, grab yourself a large mixing bowl and add 228 grams of warm water. Consequently, that's 1 cup. Now, for the yeast, I'm using dry active yeast here. You really don't need that much. You actually only need about 1/8 of a teaspoon. And you're thinking, that is not enough for dough. But trust me, it's gonna work. Now just give this yeast a second to dissolve. Then you're gonna add 352 grams of 00 flour. That. I start mixing with a fork just until the dough kind of gets shaggy, and then I move on to my hands. Now you don't have to knead this dough. All we're doing is combining it. So just press it around, kind of scrape the dough that's sticking to the sides of the bowl down, and just press everything together just until the ingredients become kind of homogeneous. All right, there you go. This is what your Biga is supposed to look like. Okay, so cover the bowl up and let your Biga sit at room temp for about 12 hours, okay? So I do this at night right before I go to sleep. I mix my Biga, only takes 2 seconds. Cover it, let it sit out, and the next morning it's ready to go. Check it out. This is a Biga that's ready to go. It's super dimply, it looks like it wants to collapse. The yeast is fully fermented. This looks beautiful. All right, for this final dough, I have 340 grams of 00 flour, 222 grams of warm water, and 18 grams of sea salt. Got my Biga here in this large bowl, and I'm just gonna add everything directly into the bowl with the Biga. So here's my water. Okay. I'm gonna go salt next. Just kind of give it a little stir, help dissolve that a little bit, and then in with the flour. And I'm just gonna work diligently to mix this dough and make sure that the Biga is evenly incorporated throughout the entire dough. So use the pinch method. I've done this in some other videos of mine, and just press everything together, move the dough around, try to scrape anything that's sticking to the sides of the bowl and incorporate it into the dough. This is gonna take some time, 5 minutes or so, to make sure that the dough is completely homogeneous. All right, yeah, this looks fantastic. This looks perfect. This dough is totally homogeneous. Yeah, I feel good about this. So I'm gonna slap a lid back on the bowl. We're gonna let the dough rest for about 20 minutes to let the flour hydrate completely, and then we'll take the dough out of the bowl and knead it. So flour this board, and then take the dough out of the bowl. Just like that. All right. Add a little flour to the top of the dough, and then you're just gonna start kneading it and folding it like this. Might feel a little wet, but the more you work the dough, the more the gluten structure begins to develop, and the dough will start to get smooth and easier to handle. And if you need to add a little bit more flour, you can do that, no problem. You don't want to go overboard though. Then you're just gonna change the hydration percentage of the dough too much. So do this for, I don't know, a couple minutes until the dough starts to get smooth and you know it's ready to go. This looks pretty good. See how smooth that is? So I'm just gonna form it into a ball just by tucking the dough underneath of itself. Tighten up the dough a little bit here. And then I'm gonna go in and add the dough to a lightly greased bowl. Use olive oil to grease it. Yeah, it's sticking to my fingers now. Okay, here we go. In the bowl, gonna cover it up, nice and tight. And I'm gonna let this dough rest at room temperature for about 2 hours until it's doubled in size. Then we'll portion it off and put it into smaller containers, and we'll go from there. So 2 hours, room temp. All right, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 containers. They're lightly oiled and ready to go. Our dough has doubled in size. It's been resting for about 2.5 hours. You can see it's still nice and smooth. I'm gonna use a dough scraper here and just carefully take it out of the bowl and onto the cutting board. There we go. So this dough here, this is a 65% hydration dough. And it's large enough, when you break it up into 4 pieces, it's gonna give you 4 290-gram dough balls. Perfectly sized for like a pizza oven, like this, like the Ooni Koda. Okay, what am I doing next? Oh yeah, let's go ahead and just flour the surface of the dough a little bit. And then I'm just gonna make 2 cuts here to generate 4 even pieces of dough. You can always break out the scale if you wanna get super exact. Okay, there we go. There we go. All right, now I'm just gonna wanna shape these guys into dough balls. And you can do that with your hands, like this, just by tucking the dough underneath of itself, sort of rotating the dough ball in your hand. All right, eventually it'll get nice and tight. You can also run it around in a circular motion on the cutting board, like so. You just get a little dough ball, like that. And they go in the containers. Notice how I'm not using the refrigerator at all here. None of this dough is being retarded, or I'm not cold fermenting any of it. It's all at room temp. What's really cool about that is it brings out different flavors in the dough as opposed to cold fermentation. So cold fermentation, you get some good bacteria that create acids that give you that sort of a sour flavor. With room temp fermentation, you're going to get sort of more earthy flavors, like weedy flavors. There's more of a yeast fermentation going on as opposed to a yeast and a bacteria fermentation going on in cold fermentation. So flavors will be a little different with this dough. I'm going to let it sit out at room temp for maybe a couple of hours. And my timeline for all of this is, again, I make my Biga at night, let's say around 11 o'clock or so. I wake up the next morning, I let the Biga go for a little bit longer, end up making dough around 11, maybe 12 o'clock. The dough rests for 2.5 hours, so you're looking at maybe 2 to 3 o'clock. Then I separate the dough into dough balls like this. I let those rest for 2 to 3 hours, and then I'm ready to eat dinner at 5 or 6 o'clock. So it works out really well. If you can follow that timeline, you'll have dough ready for dinner and be awesome. All right, guys, I've got the Ooni Koda 16 fired up and ready to go. I let it preheat for about 20 minutes. Then I check the stone temp with this infrared thermometer. It's basically a point and shoot kind of thing. Once it hits 825 degrees Fahrenheit or about 440 degrees Celsius, we're ready to rock and roll. All right, I've got a little flour on my work surface here, and I'm gonna put one of my dough down. You gotta be kinda, there we go. They kind of just plop right out. There. Next, a little bit of dough on top, just so it's not so sticky. Now, everybody's got their own way to stretch dough. This is mine, okay? First, I start with a crust, and I form that. Flip it over. Push from the center out to form that crust. And if the dough seems kind of sticky, what you're gonna do is just add a little bit more flour. Just a little bit, just so it doesn't stick so much. Next, I'm gonna stretch it with my knuckles a little bit, but I'm gonna let gravity do most of the work. Just stretch and let gravity pull the dough down. And that's pretty much it. The dough is stretched very quickly. This dough is pretty soft, so, okay. Now I'm gonna build my pizza. We're gonna start off with a Margherita first. That's kind of my control pizza. If I can make a good Margherita, then I know the rest of the night's gonna be really good. So I'm gonna add some San Marzano tomato sauce. This is just raw, crushed San Marzano tomatoes. There. Next, a little bit of fresh mozzarella. I'm gonna go probably about 3 ounces, but whatever works for you is good. You be you. Now we're gonna do some basil. Guys, if you wanna put basil on after the pizza comes out of the oven, go for it. I just prefer to do it this way. Again, you be you. Do what you wanna do. Whatever sounds good to you. You're the one eating the pizza, not me. There, that's good. Perfect. Nice to have basil in the garden. You can just grab it whenever you need to. Now, I'm gonna grab a little bit of freshly grated Parmigiano and just finish the pizza off with that. Okay, there's my version of a Margherita. Make sure the peel has a little bit of flour on it, not too much, just a little bit. And then you're gonna slowly pull the pizza up onto the peel and then kind of correct its shape so it's circular again. Boom. Good to go. We're gonna go in the oven. Stone temp is 825. I launch the pizza at full heat and then I turn it down, or else you're just gonna scorch the crap out of your crust. There. And check it. Yeah. Give it a little bit of a turn, and then back in the oven she goes. You gotta watch really closely here and monitor the pizza. It cooks very quickly. And again, you have to kind of mess with the heat of the oven. I haven't found the perfect temp through the entire cook. You always gotta adjust it. A little bit more. Check the bottom. Looking pretty good. All right, this should be the last turn. Checking the bottom, still looks good. Just a little bit longer. All right, I'm pulling it. What do you guys think about that? A little burn here and there, just these air pockets, these air bubbles, but I'm cool with that, man. I like a little char in my crust. Here we go. Finish this thing off with a little bit of extra virgin olive oil. And then we'll cut into it. Yeah, that looks great. Let's take a look. Looks pretty nice, huh? How about underneath? Pretty solid. There you go. Beautiful. Here we go, Margherita. All right, let's fire another one. I'll taste both of them together. I'm gonna cook a different pizza now. This is some heavy cream that I've reduced by half. Just heated up and reduced by half and seasoned it. I don't need much here, just a little bit. If you reduce the cream too much when you bring it down on the stove, it'll break in the oven when you bake the pizza. So you only need to go down by half or so. Beautiful. Now we're gonna add just some sauteed onions. A little bit of caramelization here is gonna give them some more sweetness. Nice little kind of juxtaposition on flavors with the rest of the ingredients because everything else is really savory. I'm gonna go in with some aged provolone. This is a nice sharp flavor to it. You'll see it a lot in like New York style pizza cheese blends. Perfect. And then a little bit of aged Parmigiano. Well, all Parmesan's aged. The undisputed king of cheese right here. Now we're gonna add some sliced cremini mushrooms. Perfect. A little bit of fresh rosemary from the garden. So do a little bit of a chop on it, just to break it down. And then we'll finish with some garlic infused oil. Just a little bit here, so fresh garlic. You know, it'd be really nice to finish this off too is a little bit of cracked black pepper, but I don't have my mill out here, so we're just gonna skip that. All right, in the oven she goes. And I'm gonna turn this heat down so I don't burn the crust. All right, guys. There's that one. Looks pretty good. It's a simpler looking pie. Doesn't look like there's much on it, but trust me, it's really delicious. All right. Yeah. Oh my God, this looks fantastic. I like this over the Margherita. Oh man, look at that crema. Holy crap. Yeah. Man, all right. What do you guys think of the crust? All right, I got a little dark underneath. Not burnt though, just a little darker than normal. Still looks fantastic. All right, it's time to start taste testing. Let's start with the Margherita, shall we? Whoa. Great acidity from the tomatoes, creaminess from the fresh mozzarella, and then some fresh flavor from that basil. The dough is fantastic. It's soft, it's tender, it's got loads of flavor. Perfect. Here we go, mushroom pizza. Damn, that is super, super good. I love how creamy it is. This reduced cream, fantastic. Nice earthiness from the mushrooms. You get a sort of a savory, nice savory herbaceous flavor from the rosemary, and a sharpness from that provolone and grana padano, or parmesan in this case. Dough, again, nice and tender. It's got kind of a weedy, nutty flavor to it almost. It's delicious. So good. All right, guys, you've seen what I've done here today. If you have any questions, hit me in the comment section. I'm happy to respond. Subscribe if you haven't already. Give me a thumbs up, and I'll catch you next time.